Welcome to Convolution Tech YouTube channel. Here today actually we are going to discuss, today I am going to present about a client server architecture with different types. As we know this in our IT industry we are having a very complex system, like some ERP systems are there, some distributed systems are also there. So, now basically what is the backbone of these kind of systems, how to maintain this kind of systems, or on which purpose, like which platforms actually these things are going to function. So, see, client server architecture is going to play a big role in IT industry. So, here what we are going to learn, we are going to learn what is basically a client server architecture, and we are going to learn something about the different tiers, like 1 tier, 2 tier, 3 tier and entire architecture. So, we will see this thing, we will see this presentation with the help of some diagrams also. So, let us go. So, first of all we will see what is basically a client server architecture. So, the client server architecture is a model where clients request services and server provides them. As a client, let us say I am going to send some request to whom? To a server, and it is the duty. So, it is the duty of the client is just to send the request, and the duty of the server is going to respond to those particular requests. So, in client server architecture the term says one is a client and the other one we have got a server concept. So, the client function of the client is what? Just to send request, and function of the server is what? To just to respond to those requests. So, client server architecture is a model, basically it is a model where we are having two different role players, one is the client and the other one is the model. Okay. So, this is the basic fundamental things about the client server architecture. Now, when we talk about this thing, used in web application, enterprise system and network software. Now, how, where are we going to use this particular model? Basically, we are going to use this particular model in web application. When we have to run, suppose you have developed a web application, now you have to run this particular web application. So, what I need a platform. So, this platform can be based on this client server architecture model. Then enterprise system, we are having an enterprise distributed system where we are having different modules and we are going to run them successfully, like take the example of ERP. So, there also this client server architecture is going to play a big role. And then other network softwares, some other related network softwares we have. So, in this particular areas actually the client server architecture is going to function. This we are going to take the help of this particular model when you are going to run this kind of applications, like web application, like in your enterprise system or any network software. Now, what are the different key components? See, basically the key components are client server and the database server. Okay. So, the basic key components, one is your client, the other one is your server, and then we have got something called this database server. Now, see, there are different tiers of this client server architecture. So, we will see different tiers. First of all, we will see the one tier architecture. Now, what is it? Let us consider a single machine. Let us consider your laptop, where you are going to run a particular software. So, it says like all components like UI, user interface, logic and data, they are in a single system. So, in the same machine we will have the UI part, we will have the database part, we will have your server part, logic, we will have three things together, the UI, the logic part as well as the data part. So, if we assemble everything in one machine, in one system, then we are going to say this is basically a one tier architecture. So, like example, MS Access application. MS Access is a very good example of this particular one tier architecture, where we will have let us say you are creating a form, and through the form you are entering the data, and same data is going to be stored in the form. While filling up the form, what we can do? We can enforce some validations and all these things, and after filling up the form, when we click on a submit button, then what happens? My data is going to be stored somewhere in a table, but this entire thing is happening where? In a particular single machine. So, this is a typical example of one tier architecture, MS Access application, where all things, all the operations, the UI, the logic, the data part are being handled on the same machine. That is why this is called one tier architecture. Advantage is very simple and easy to develop, as because everything is going to happen in one machine only. So, it is very simple and it is very easy to develop also. It takes less time to develop this kind of system. The disadvantages, not scalable, hard to maintain, and it is very difficult to maintain because as everything is present in the same machine, and it is not scalable also. So, these are some disadvantages. So, what you have seen? We have seen what is basically a one tier architecture, what are the different components in a one tier architecture, and what are the advantages and what are the disadvantages of this one tier architecture, or we can say one tier or single tier architecture. Let us come to next one, the two tier architecture, where two things are being divided. Divide the client UI and the logic and the database server. So, let us suppose in one machine you will be having your user interface and the logic, the business logic, the validations in one machines, and in another machine we will have the database server. So, there are two different layers we have, two different tiers, we have two different components are there, two different systems are involved in this kind of architecture, two tier architecture. Now, example, VB front end with MySQL back end, VB Visual Basic. With the help of that VB, let us say you are developing a front end in the client application, where you are enforcing some logics and all these things, and your data is supposed to be stored in a database like MySQL. So, here it is a two tier architecture, as because there are two different, unlike your one tier architecture or the single tier architecture, where everything is going to be stored in one machine, but in this case it is not like that. In one machine we will have this UI and logic in the client part, in the other machine we can have this database server. A very good example I am sharing with you, like the VB front end along with the MySQL as a back end. Advantages, better data management. What are the main advantages? Better data management, data can be managed in a very proper way. But the disadvantage is your limited scale. Yeah, scalability we have, but there are some limitations. Okay. So, this is a disadvantage in case of two tier architecture. So far we have seen two different architectures of two different tiers about this client server architecture. One is your single tier or one tier architecture, and then we have seen two tier architecture. I think we must have understood what is the difference between client server, this single tier and two tier architecture. Now, let us come to another architecture, which is so look at this two tier. I am sharing one diagrammatic presentation. See, we are having this server, the database application. Now, these are what different clients. So, these clients are interacting, are sending the request to the server. So, clients, they are going to send the request only, and this the server is going to take care about the response, those requests. So, it is going to response only. So, this is a very small diagrammatic presentation about your two tier architecture of client server, two tier about this client server architecture. Let us come to the three tier architecture. So, here what happened, like three layers are involved. One is the presentation, the UI, the other one is the application or the business logic, and then we have got the database, the DB part. Okay. So, there are three different layers are there in three different systems. So, example like Angular IE, Angular, with the help of Angular, what we can do, we can develop an UI. Then Node.js, the logic. The Node.js is going to behave like a logical, is going to take care of the logic part, and let us say the MongoDB, which is the database part. So, three different components are there. One is the UI part, which is separate. The other one is the Node.js, which is going to be responsible for handling the logic part. Then we have got MongoDB. So, three different things are there in three different processes. So, what are the advantages? Scalable, secured, and maintainability. It is highly scalable, secured also, and maintainability. So, it is very easy. It's in an efficient way. What we can do, we can maintain these different parts separately. Now, disadvantage is more complex to develop. Obviously, it is very complex, unlike your single tier or two tier, it's a complex one. But obviously, when we are talking about this large system, they are all there, like there, if you have to develop, or there you have to deploy this kind of architecture, you have to take the help of this kind of architecture, then obviously we will go for the three tier architecture, neither your single tier nor your this two tier architecture. Now, I am sharing a very small example also, diagrammatic presentation. So, we are having a presentation layer. Then in between this presentation and database layer, we are having a client, we are having this application layer, the business logic server. So then we have got this database tier. So this one we can talk about Angular, this portion we can talk about Node.js, and this one we can talk about database like MongoDB. So these are the different areas where we can implement this. This is the way actually we can implement the 3-tier architecture. Now this is all, so far we have seen single tier, 2-tier and 3-tier architecture. Now let us come for this entire architecture. More than 3 layers used in large application and distributed system. Now what are the different layers like UI, logic, web services, API, data access? These are some different in the unlike in the like in the 3-tier architecture. What you have seen, UI, logic and data access. Now these two things if you have to implement, like the different web services, some APIs are there. So in that case, the 3-tier architecture is also not good enough. In that case, we will go for entire architecture, where we are having 3 different layers. Now example, one very good example we can say about the ERP system, where we are having different modules. So those modules are going to be maintained properly in a different way. So in this kind of situation, we can go for this entire architecture. Now if we talk about the advantages, modular, scalable and reusable, which is very much needed to maintain a very complex system. So if we have to handle a very complex system, definitely we will go for this entire architecture, but obviously disadvantage is what is the increased complexity. Complexity are more in case of this entire architecture, but that definitely if you have to maintain, if you have to develop any ERP system or a very complex system, in that case we have to handle with entire architecture. So this is all about your 3 different tiers. What you have seen, 4 tier rather, single tier, 2 tier, 3 tier and entire architecture. Now it's up to the situation. Okay, we are going to handle them. So I am sharing one very small comparison table with you for your understanding. When we are talking about this 1-tier architecture, what are the different layers can be used? See, in the single machine, the layers are going to be used, UI plus logic plus data. Very good example I can share with you, like MS Access, where we can use local desktop applications. Suppose you are creating a local desktop application where you can, and you want to employ this client server architecture, in that case you can very easily go for this 1-tier or single tier architecture. Let us talk about the 2-tier architecture, where we are having UI plus logic in one machine and then the database should be in another machine. So example, Java apps plus MySQL. So through the Java apps we can develop this UI and logic, and if you want to store the data in a database, we can take the example of MySQL. Small business apps, if you want to develop a very small business apps, where we can use this 2-tier architecture. Now let us talk about the 3-tier architecture, where we are where these 3 things are going to be stored separately, like UI, logic and DB. The very good example like React, Node and Mongo. With the help of React, we can develop the UI, the Node is responsible for maintaining the logic, and so React plus Node is going to take care of these 2 things, and the MongoDB is responsible for to maintain the data, as the data is going to act as a database server. So where we can use them for any kind of web portal and e-commerce. So in this kind, to develop this kind of application, we are going to take the help of 3-tier architecture, 3-tier of client server architecture. And let us talk about this entire architecture. We are having multiple layers, and examples like the ERP and cloud apps. Now where are we going to use them, like enterprise and cloud solutions. So this is a very small table. Okay, whatever we have learned so far, I am just sharing a summary table, comparison table for your understanding. So this way we can use the 2 different different tiers, and these are some examples I am sharing where we can use them. That is also I am going to share with you. So hope you have understood this one. So let us go to the summary portion. So what is this client server model support? Centralized services. Tiered architecture improves scalability, security and maintenance. More tiers equal to better control but more complexity. Obviously, more tier means better control, but you are enhancing the complexity of your system. But anyway, if you have to maintain a complex system, then you have to go for different, like the complex, you have to increase the number of tiers. Then only your systems can be maintained properly. So one thing, this client server architecture is going to play a big role, and as we can say, this is the backbone of any kind of system. In IT industry, we are maintaining several systems and all these things, a complex system, maybe a simpler one, but these can be done with the help of our client-server architecture. So, when we are going to decide which system we are going to adapt or we are going to develop, we are going to that time we are going to decide which tier is responsible, okay, because this client-server architecture, the different tiers of this client-server architecture is going to play a big role. So, it is a very important topic. So, we must learn, we must know about this. Let us say we are using like Node.js, we are using let us say React, we are using some databases, but the thing is that where are we going to place them, where are we going to use them, on which particular tier, like let us say you are developing a tier. So, in that to develop that particular tier, which language we should use, whether we will use React or Node.js, where are we going to use this MongoDB. So, these are the things which are supposed to be very clear, because when we are talking about, if you face any kind of interview related to client-server architecture, you have to explain like this. You are using React, but on which particular, for which purpose you are getting here, you are using Node, you are using Node.js, for which purpose you are using MongoDB, for which purpose you are using. So, these are the things are supposed to be cleared. So, this is a very small presentation from our side. Hope you have understood. Thank you.